This is quickly becoming one of the most important seasons in the history of Nebraska football. For the first time in a long time, the Huskers are knocking on the door of national relevancy with a legit chance to make the college football playoff. But with all of the optimism, there's also a lot of problems. So I recently polled you, the fans, and I asked, what are your biggest concerns for the Huskers going into 2025? So in today's video, I'm going to answer all of them and so much more. What are the biggest hurdles the Huskers need to jump through in order to be successful? How good is this offense really going to be? Is Dane Holgorsen actually going to stick around long term? What does Matt Rhule need to change about him in order to be the guy going forward? And then when it's all said and done, what Nebraska needs to do in order to actually make the playoffs. So really quick, this is a big time video answering Nebraska's biggest questions and concerns. Hit that like button if you're fired up. And also if you're a diehard Nebraska fan and you're not subscribed, what are you waiting for? For daily content, talking about your favorite team, talking Huskers. It's a no-brainer, takes 2 seconds. Join this family. Hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much. But without further ado, we have a lot to get into. Talking about Nebraska's biggest concerns going into 2025. This is part 2. I recently polled you guys once again, asking your biggest questions, your biggest concerns, things you're looking out for the Huskers in order to be successful this year. So let's just get things started with the number one question that I received. This is the expectations for all 3 of Nebraska's newest coordinators, what we can expect, how good they're actually going to be. Now, of course, we know that Nebraska, they have pretty much a brand new coaching staff. Besides our head man, we have a brand new offensive coordinator, Dane Holgorsen, brand new defensive coordinator in John Butler, and a brand new special teams coordinator in Mike Eckler. How good are these guys going to be? Are they going to gel together? So let's start it off with the offense. I think that Dane Holgorsen right off the bat is going to crush it for Nebraska this year. I'm very bullish, as the rest of you are. I think it's going to be a pass-first offense. It's going to be different from what we've seen in the past couple of years, but it's going to utilize Dylan Raiola's arm the right way. We're going to get our playmakers involved. The play calling is going to be a lot better inside the red zone in particular. We're going to be better in clutch situations. We're going to win close games. So I think Dane Holgorsen is absolutely going to revolutionize Nebraska's offense. That's not something I'm worried about. Can't say the same about the other units, but here's the problem with Dane Holgorsen. I absolutely believe he's going to be gone after 2025. I think it's a very similar situation to Tony White last year, where I told you guys last year with Tony White, don't expect Tony White to be here next year. It's just not going to happen. It's either going to go one of 2 ways. It's either the defense breaks out, Tony White goes get a head coaching job, or the defense isn't really that good and he goes and takes another offensive coordinator job. I feel the same way Dana Holgorsen. It's either the offense booms, it's going to be top 10, and in that case, Dana Holgorsen's going to go somewhere else. He absolutely should. He should be a head coach. He's only 50 years old, right? And he said multiple times in multiple interviews that he wouldn't mind being a head coach again. Okay, so I think it's either that's going to happen, or the offense does not do that good. We're not really rooting on that scenario. And then in that case, Dana Holgorsen probably either leaves, takes another offensive coordinator job, or he stays. But that might not be the best thing, because the offense in that case wouldn't have taken the big step forward. So that's what I'm expecting from the offense. I do think it's going to be the first one, though. I think the offense is going to be phenomenal. And then Dana Holgorsen's gone, which that's just the way it is nowadays, right? You got to expect that with coordinators. Coordinators are never going to stick around long term. It just doesn't happen anymore. So not really a big concern. As for the other brand new coordinators for Nebraska, I think John Butler, again, has a lot of questions. There are a lot of questions there, of course, with Tony White, who honestly I was very high on. I was kind of disappointed from what he did last year, but you say what you want about Tony White, very experienced, and his highs were very high for Nebraska. I think John Butler is going to have his flaws going into this year, but I can firmly tell you, I think he's going to be just as good as Tony White long-term. I think he's going to be in the mix long-term. He's not somebody I expect to get a head coaching job. So I think John Butler might be one of those guys that just sticks around as a defensive coordinator for the next 10, 15 years, along with Matt Rhule. But with that being said, there are a lot of flaws that he needs to address. Just the fact that he's not been a defensive coordinator throughout his career. Again, has very minimal experience. Last time, of course, that was Penn State about a decade ago. Boston College, there were some good moments. There are also some bad moments. So there's a lot to improve. And obviously, as a recruiter, he probably needs to develop that as well. So again, feel good about John Butler, just not great. And then as for Mike Eckler, I think honestly, the special teams is going to get a lot better this year, but I don't think it's going to be a complete product. I don't think it's going to be, go from one of the worst to one of the best overnight, because it takes some time to completely revolutionize a unit in that department. I think we're going to get a lot better on kick returns, punt returns, coverage in that department as well. But, actually kicking the ball through the upright or punting the ball at a high level, kicking it 60, 75, or not 75 yards, but 60, 65 yards, flipping the field position. I just don't think that's going to happen, right? Because I just don't think we have the guys on the roster yet from a Mike Eckler recruiting standpoint. So Mike Eckler, I think, is going to do a good job. I think he's probably here long-term. Of course, he's from Nebraska, but I don't think it's all going to get fixed overnight. So that's my answer to that, talking about our brand new coordinators. Question number 2. What players on Nebraska's roster have the most to prove? Now, I've come up with 5 guys I'm really looking out for who honestly just have the most to prove, right? And if they were to prove themselves, it would be huge for Nebraska. Like, it could be the difference in us only winning 6 games to potentially winning 9, potentially winning 10, if these guys could break out in a big way. Number one is Quinn Ives. And Quinn Ives obviously is a huge chip on his shoulder. He's heard the disrespect, obviously coming from this channel a little bit too, because I'm just not high on Quinn Ives. I don't believe in him really. Like, he has 6 carries for 7 yards last year, barely played. Obviously wasn't doing enough in practice to even get on the playing field. So listen, this is his big opportunity. There's some guys nipping behind him, Mekhi Nelson, Jamarion Parker, Connor Booth. Can he hold him off in fall ball? Because I think if Quinn Ives could be that short yardage running back Nebraska is looking for, that's a huge help for this offense. It doesn't, put all the load on Emmett Johnson, which is currently on. So Quinn Ives has a lot to prove. Malcolm Hartzog has a lot to prove. Oh my goodness. I mean, that's somebody who's disrespected by the fan base a lot and probably deserves a little bit of it just because Malcolm Hartzog has been a liability throughout his career. I mean, literally since he played as a true freshman, he's been a liability, right? He's a guy who constantly is not great in man coverage, not great in zone, ball hawking too much, where yes, he'll get interceptions from time to time, but he'll also get burnt because he's looking at the football, not at the receiver. So Malcolm Hartzog has a lot to prove. I believe in his potential. I think he could have a good year in the nickel spot, but we'll see what happens there. And then, of course, you got Teddy Prohaska. I think he has a lot to prove. He's probably going to be our starting right tackle this year. The coaching staff loves him. It's not really about, he doesn't need to prove to me what he's doing on the field. I feel good about him on the field. Prove to me you can stay healthy. That's the main thing there, because if he gets injured, we have a lot of issues at the tackle position. Speaking of tackles, Elijah Pritchett, lots to prove. He's on bust ass right now. He's trying to salvage his career. It wasn't ideal. He transferred from Alabama to Nebraska. He definitely didn't think that was going to be the case 2 years ago coming out of high school. He has a lot to prove. Let's do it. Okay, let's live up to your 5-star potential. And the last but not least, speaking of 5 stars, Williams Nwaneri. Same deal kind of with Teddy, or not with Teddy, but similar, where I'm not really worried about him on the field. I think when Williams Nwaneri is on the field, he's going to be fine, but I'm worried about him off the field. In the Teddy aspect, I'm worried about him staying healthy. In the Williams aspect, I'm worried about him doing all the right things from Monday to Friday and being completely bought in. So those are the 5 players who have a lot to prove, but if they can break out, it's huge for this team. Third question I received: what's the biggest thing that's impressed me about Matt Rhule so far? But honestly, and here's the second part of the question, the biggest thing that he needs to work on in order for Nebraska to be successful. Okay. Well, the first answer is easy. The thing I've been impressed about when it comes to Matt Rhule's development, like that's something I heard from Baylor fans, Temple fans, is that this is somebody who is going to take over a roster and make players better. And that's exactly what's happening. Like, we've seen a lot of players who are considered busts so far with their career in Nebraska completely turn things around. So I think he's a great developer. We've already seen that. But the thing that Matt Rhule needs to improve in order to sell me that he's the guy long-term, and it's something that I've been very disappointed about, is from a game playing standpoint, but also from an in-game decision-making and clock management standpoint, because he's been one of the worst in America. And there's been just time after time, especially in 2023. He got a little better last year, but there were times where he would just blow his timeouts for no reason in the third quarter. And we didn't have any in the fourth quarter. That would be one of the reasons we lost a close game. He completely messed up the quarterback situation in 2023, right? Not starting Chuba Purdy until the very end, when Chuba Purdy was very clearly the best quarterback on that roster that year. He let Casey Thompson walk for no reason, even though Casey Thompson would have been phenomenal. Obviously there are a lot of issues with Matt Rhule from a game planning standpoint, from an in-game decision standpoint, from a personnel standpoint. Like, again, you feel great about him. Recruiter, he's been solid. He's been great in recruiting, great in development, but as an actual game planning, X and O's head coach, it's not been great. Now, I don't know how much of a step forward he's actually going to get better at that, but I understand from a Matt Rhule standpoint, he's filled in the cracks by bringing in guys who complement him. In a Dana Holgorsen, who's a great game planner. A Phil Snow is a great game planner. A Philip Simpson, who's a great recruiter. So I feel good that it's going to get better from a staff standpoint, but for Matt Rhule in particular, from like making the right decisions and not blowing timeouts too early. Got to see to believe it there. So that is definitely a concern that we got to address this year. What's the biggest thing in the way from Nebraska breaking out? Like, what's the big thing that we need to, the biggest hurdle in order for Nebraska to actually break out? I think there's 2. I think, if Raiola doesn't take the jump that we think, we're not going to break out. Like, Raiola needs to take that big jump because his offense will live or die by his arm. So really, the whole team, it goes by Raiola. And that's not often the case of college football. Sometimes even if you have a mid-average quarterback, you can still be very successful, depending on your offense, depending on your defense. That's just not going to be the case this year with all of our defensive question marks, with our lack of running game. Like, it's really going to rely on Dylan. And if Dylan's not that good, we're just not going to be good as a team. So that's the biggest hurdle. And then also, honestly, second biggest hurdle is just not winning the battle of the trenches, right? We got to be dominant on the offensive defensive line. The coaching staff, they've been hyping up the O-line. I got to see to believe it there. As for the D-line, it's probably going to be a little bit worse than last year, but, there's still a lot of guys there who have high potentials, like a Cam Lenhart, like a Raven Popple, like a Williams Nwaneri, who just talked about Keona Davis, Jalen George. So there's a lot of things to be excited about on this defensive line, but very similar. Guys need to believe it. Those are the two things we kind of need to address in order to break out. If we can do both those things, if the offensive defensive line, if they're elite, if Dylan Raiola is elite, we're going to be very, very good. Then, fifth question. In your opinion, what is the biggest red flag going into Nebraska fall camp? I think there's two red flags. Number one's the running back core, and I'm just kind of waiting to see who emerges at running back too, because Quinn Ives, I just don't think did enough in spring ball. He obviously got injured too, which was a huge thing. Like, you can't get injured. Quinn Ives, you just can't. Like, for the first time in your entire career, you have an opportunity and you get injured. Jamarion Parker, same deal. Stay healthy. Mekhi Nelson, he was healthy, but you got to break out now. So again, running back, who could be running back too? Because I'm telling you, if Emmett Johnson goes down, we are screwed. We are screwed. So that's a big red flag in my opinion. And then second red flag is just, honestly, I think it's the punter position, right? With Archie Wilson, even punter and kicker, I'll just group them together. Like, who can emerge there, right? Can we actually have a consistent punter? I just don't know if that's going to be the case, right? Brian Machidi was not consistent last year. He had very high highs, very low lows. Can Archie Wilson be consistent? I don't know. Okay, what about kicker? Same deal there. Do we believe in John Holt? Because even despite, the snapping issues last year, there'd be times where John Holt, he'd have a perfect snap, perfect hold, and he still duff it. Can he fix that? What about Kyle Kaahaaina? That's a complete wild card. So those are the biggest red flags. So you can figure out special teams and running back. I think we're in a good spot. Number 6. This is not really a concern, but who, in your opinion, is Nebraska's most important and valuable positional coach? I'll give you 3. I think Nikhil Schwartz is going to be very important for Nebraska. I think he's developing to be one of the best receiver coaches in America. He's also a great recruiter. Number 2, Philip Simpson, without a doubt, is the most important recruiter on Nebraska's coaching staff. That's not even particularly close. So, yeah, I mean, they got to do whatever it takes to keep Philip Simpson on the staff long term because he's building up that Nebraska connection by himself. And then last but not least, I think, honestly, our brand new DB coach, Addison Williams, is pretty important because he could very well be our next defensive coordinator. Something didn't work out with John Butler. Addison Williams had been a defensive coordinator before at UCF. I think he could very well be that guy. So Addison Williams, I'd say, is also one of our more valuable positional coaches, all of which were not on the staff last year. So that tells you kind of a lot about how bad Nebraska's staff was last season. Then, this also isn't about the year, but somebody asked, what is your biggest concern right now with Nebraska recruiting? Okay. And I honestly think my biggest concern, the reason why the 26 class isn't elite, isn't top 20, it's just simply where Nebraska hasn't been good enough. Like, NIL, obviously, there are some things that I would probably change. I'd be a little bit more aggressive when it comes to NIL. I think that's a no-brainer. I think in order to be successful from a recruiting standpoint, NIL is number 1. But at the end of the day, Nebraska just hasn't won enough games. Like, it's hard to get high 4 stars here when Matt Rhule has a losing record throughout his career with Nebraska and has blown a lot of close games. Like, it doesn't give me a lot to believe in as a recruit, right? So Nebraska, they just need to win more if they break out. A lot of our issues will be solved, but at the same time, we got to offer more money because, although we have the money, we're just choosing not to spend it. That's not really the best strategy because despite how good we think we're going to be, we're still not going to land 5 stars. We could win 11 games, and even if we win 11 games, if we don't offer enough in NIL, we won't land these 5 stars. That's just the sport nowadays. So you got to bump with the NIL no matter what, or else you're just going to be getting a bunch of 3 stars, and then you're not going to be very good. That's just the bottom line. Number 8, which room, in your opinion, this is a good question, which positional room do you think is going to be hit hard the most when we get to December at the end of the season? Well, it's tough to say. Obviously, it kind of depends on how good we're going to be, but I think there's really 2 rooms to look out for. Number 1, it's the DBs. No question about it. We already have like 1 million DBs on this roster. A lot of guys trying to prove themselves. So I think DBs, number 1, I mean, it's going to get ripped through. And that's why I stress the importance of taking some DBs in this recruiting class because we have no idea what it's going to look like in a couple months after the year. The DBs room is going to look completely different without Sear Wright as well. Deshaun Singleton, Marcus Buford, Malcolm Hartzog. All those guys are graduating as well. So it's going to look different. So Nebraska, they got to land some recruits and some transfers there probably. And then I think the wide receivers could look completely different. I could see a guy like Janiran Bonner leave with 1 year left. I could see Demitrius Bell leave if he doesn't break out like I think he will, but I think he will break out. Some other guys there. So those are the positions, DBs and wide receivers. And then 9th question here. What is the biggest surprise storyline that you think is going to happen this year for the Huskers? So something that you think is going to happen, I think is going to happen throughout the year. I'll give you a couple. Number 1, I think at the end of the year, not necessarily a start, maybe not against Cincinnati. I think Jamarion Parker will be swapping carries with Emmett Johnson. I think he'll emerge as running back too. Very bullish on Jamarion Parker. Really, to me, there's only 2 things that he needs to prove himself at, and it's continue to stay healthy and continue to put on weight. If he can do that, he's going to be very successful. Second thing, I think Willis McGahee is going to have a breakout year. I think he's going to be better than Vincent Shavers. He might just be better than Deshaun McCullough if he lived up to expectations. I've been very bullish on Willis McGahee. I recently just dived into his film, from when he got snaps last year, whether against Colorado, Wisconsin. This is somebody who should have been on the field a lot more than what he was. He was just dynamic. Every time I got on the field, he made a play. Okay, Willis McGahee is somebody who obviously has a great motor, great upside with his dad being a former legendary Miami Hurricanes running back. I think Willis McGahee, he's at the end of the year might just be better than Vincent. And Vincent gets all love right now, but we'll see. And Vincent's a great player. I don't want to put him in the mud. Both those guys are going to be solid, but I think Willis McGahee is just going to be even better. So we'll see there. I think Dasan McCullough, this is kind of my negative hot take. Dasan McCullough is somebody, I don't know how hard I'm buying his stock. I've seen a lot of people, they think he's going to be a top 5 player on this team. I don't know if I'm there yet with him, just because, again, he's a jack of all trades, master of none. With 1 year of eligibility left, can he actually break out to be, a top 10 edge rusher in the Big Ten? I just don't know if that's going to happen, right? So I'm not really buying the Dasan McCullough hype maybe as much as other people. I think he's going to be solid, but I'm just 1 year of eligibility left to transition back to his edge rushing position that he hasn't played in 2 years. Don't know if that's really going to happen. I don't know if he's going to be solid, but I don't know if he's going to be, elite or even really, really great. Then a couple other things that I think are going to be a big surprise storyline. I don't know if the O-line lives up to the hype. I think the interior offensive line is going to be very solid. Of course, with Spindler, Lateef, and Justin Evans, but the tackle position is questionable, man. With Elijah Pritchett, Prohaska with his injury issues, the depth there, Gatula, Corcoran, that's some issues there. So what about the O-line? And then my biggest surprise storyline that I think might happen, I'm not predicting this yet. You'll have to watch out for my prediction video on how I think the season's going to go. I think I can very well see Nebraska beat Michigan in a, I wouldn't say blowout, but I could see them beat them bad in Lincoln in a big way, say, we're here. We're here, ready to go. And then next week, lose to Michigan State. And I know it might sound crazy, but that's the exact thing that would happen in Nebraska. They finally get the monkey off their back. They get a big win. They win dominant ways. They're ranked pretty high, and then they go into Michigan State, and they're sleepwalking, and they lose. I'm not predicting that, but I could very well see it happen. Honestly, I might predict it. And then, last question I got. This is the heavy hitter. The heavy hitter. Do you actually believe in your heart of hearts that Nebraska can return to dominance and win a national championship? Yes, I do. But there are some significant caveats. I don't know if Matt Rhule's the guy to get there. I think Matt Rhule might be the bridge coach to get there, where Matt Rhule brings us back to sustainability. He brings us to 9-10 wins, maybe 11 wins. But I don't know if from a schematic standpoint if Matt Rhule is a good enough X's and O's head coach to win a national championship, frankly. Okay, so that's the big thing there. The second thing I'd say is the big caveat is how good is Nebraska's NIL going to be long-term? Because right now it's top 20, but can they be top 10 long-term? In 20 years, can they be top 5 in America? Okay, because at the end of the day, this is becoming a professional mold. It's becoming pay to win. And more and more, it's going to be harder for these smaller NIL schools to be successful. Okay, you're not really going to see these Cinderella runs as much. And that doesn't really happen much in college football anyways. Okay, so it's harder and harder for these teams to compete without NIL. Nebraska, how good can the NIL be? Because if our NIL is just average, we're not going to win national championship. Our NIL needs to be top 10, top 15. Bottom line. So those are the two caveats there. Third caveat, we need to find a way to recruit at a high level. That's just it. In order to win natties, you need to recruit at a high level consistently. It needs to be through high school recruiting. So that's my opinion there. Probably controversial. Going back to the Matt Rhule statement, again, I think Matt Rhule's a fine head coach. I think he's going to bring Nebraska back to sustainability. I just don't know from a game planning standpoint, from what we've seen in 2 years, if he can actually out game plan a Kirby Smart head to head. Just don't know if that's really the case. Or even a Ryan Day with his extensive coaching staff. Don't know if that's the case. Or a James Franklin. Don't know. In a big game. So that's really it. And I also think maybe Matt Rhule is a little bit too conservative as a head coach to be aggressive enough to win big games and win titles like that. That's just my hot take. That's me being real. You guys probably disagree with me. That's fine. So, all right. Those are me answering Nebraska's biggest question concern going into this year, talking recruiting, talking everything. So let me know your thoughts down below. I want to hear, is there a question or concern that I have not talked about in any of these videos that you still have? Let me know in the comment section. Yeah, I want to hear what you have to say for sure. Absolutely. Hey, once again, hit that like button and subscribe. If you made it this far, once again, comment that down below. Everybody have a good day. Appreciate you as always. Go Matt Rhule, and I'll see you in the next one.